Hey guys, so we are at the stream and waiting for 5 p.m. so that we can start. Thanks. Yes. Just a few more minutes, guys. Let me start. our second meetup of this pandemic period. So today we'll be looking at data using Flutter, and more specifically we'll be using shared preferences and database, that's SQLite. So I think defining what is data persistence, and like we know that sometimes in your app there is some data you need to spawn local storage and maybe get access to it later. For example, let's say there are a few details you are picking from a user input. You need to put those details somewhere so that you can maybe reuse them sometime later in the app. Yeah, so that's in a general we call like data persisting. So today we are going to look at different ways in which you can do that, and we'll be using shared preferences, which is more like storing the data now in the phone's devices local storage, and also storing the data in a database. So there's some boilerplate code here, so we won't be coding from scratch. So I have my main.dat file. We won't be coding from scratch, so I have my main.dat file. And yeah, like you see, it's just defining the app scaffolding and some few screens that we are going to be using. Yeah, so some 2 screens which are already set up. So I have an insert details screen. So this is just a form that will collect user input. Maybe if I can show you the form. Yeah, so if you can see, so it's just a form that contains 3 fields, that is the name, the email address, and the password. Yeah, so this is the one that we'll be using like now to get the user input. And I also have now a retrieve details screen. So this one is where like we'll be now retrieving the details, and I have with it like just a string, just the name dummy, and displaying it. So we'll be getting to this back later. And for us to be able to achieve a tutorial to the shared preferences, the latest version, and also the sqlite plugin which enables the sqlite database, and also the path plugin which allows us to have access to the phone storage paths. So to that later. So maybe if we can continue, so if we start from main.dat file, so this one takes us like out the insert details screen. So if I can just jump to that directly, I'll go through the code very quickly, then we start implementing. Yeah, so this is just a stateful widget, so nothing of no much state management going on, but we have something which will be storing the user input. We have the name, the email, and the password, and also like I showed you later. So this is the form here. So it has just the enter details font, and we have our form. So some of the logic from our last meetup. Yeah, so we have the name, and then we have the email, and we have the password, and then we have the submit button. So right now, as you can see, when you submit, it doesn't do anything. So you can store a string, you can store an integer, you can store a boolean, and you can store a double, any data type. So those are the 4 data types that are supported by shared preferences. In our case, and for simplicity, we'll be working with strings only. So the first thing we are going to do is now, maybe let me just comment that. So this one was like instantiating, or maybe let me call it like get references instance. And then the next thing, sorry, some code indentation here. The next thing we are going to do is now store the user details. Yeah, so I'm going to store the string. So how you store is we are going to access the value that we just created, and we are going to set string. Just use so this is the syntax, as you can see here. So to set a string or to store a string now in using shared preferences, you have to pass it the key and the value. So it's more like creating a map. So the key here will be the unique identifier that will be now to access the value, and the value is the username. So for example, if I can say the key is username, So a string and the value, so it's also expecting a string, so the value we are going to put it as like now the email that, so no, sorry, the name. So here we are going to access the name that the user had put, and maybe we'll store like the other three details. So I'm going to copy this to avoid just rewriting the code. So I copy it again to store now like the three details. So the next one is email. I'll set a key called email and I store the variable that the user is going to put, and also have another key called password, and I'll store the password I will put. Yeah, so this one now will store those three variables, and for us to see its full functionality, we'll access them somewhere. So I've structured this. We are going to navigate to our next screen where we will now be able to retrieve those details. So here we can navigate to next screen. Yeah, so I'm just going to use the default navigation named routes. So I'm just going to push a route here till take the context, and the route material page route. So material page route takes the context to, and this one will take us to the insert details, to the retrieve details. So I had created a class here called retrieve details, is another screen. So that's where we are going to redirect ourselves. Yes, so everything okay? Yeah, everything is okay now. So we are just going to push the retrieve details. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to come here to the retrieve details. So as you can see from the boilerplate code, so I have a string variable called name, which just dummy name, and I just call it dummy. And we have our body now, our scaffold body. So it's just a container. Don't worry about the widgets, just for a matter of now presenting them. So but basically of more interest is our text widget, which contains the text my name is variable name. Yeah, so what I'm going to do, maybe I'm going to run the application. Yeah, so I'll do Flutter run. So this, yeah, Flutter run take just a couple of seconds, and then it will run, and then we'll see like what it will display at first, and then we are going to fetch the variables that we created in our last screen, and then we are going to display them. So let's just give it a few seconds to run. So this should not take long. Hopefully, yeah, just a few more seconds. Oh, that is, yeah, not quite many, but no, relative that 3 seconds might be many. So let's wait for it to load our physical emulator. That should also take very few seconds too. Ooh, and it's done. Takes the values and it stores them in the shared preferences, directs us to the next screen. So let's start typing. So I'll just put my name is Isaac. I'll put my dummy email, so I'll put Isaac at dummyemail.com. Yes, don't worry, so we are not sending any confirmation email, so I can use that one, and I just use a dummy password. Yeah, 1 2 3 4 and spy password, and then I submit. Yeah, so as you can see, it has taken us to this screen, our retrieve details screen, and by default it just displays the default name value, but we are going to change that right now, and we are going to retrieve the values that we stored in shared preferences. So just a second, guys, we are here, but I hope everything is going to be okay. Yeah, just a second, guys. Oh, it's back. Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to do this. So we are going to fetch the details now once the state is now initiated. So I'm going to access the Flutter's the stateful widgets, the init stage. So I just grab that to do, because that's where we are going to implement our init state. And here, so I want you to note one thing here very quickly. Sorry for that. Yeah, so I want you to note something here very quickly, that for init state and how Flutter functions, you cannot access any value that returns a future in the init stage. So we are going to create a function that fetches details now from shared preferences. So I'm just going to call a function here, so fetch details from shared preferences. Yeah, let me just comment that from shared preferences. Yeah, and it's bringing an error right now because we haven't yet written our function. So I write our function below here, and it's a void, but since it's written void, I don't have to specify the return type. So I can just say fetch details from shared preferences. And now, like, remember the first thing when we were inserting, the first thing we did was to get the shared preferences instance. So anytime you want to use the shared preferences instance, you have to instantiate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the shared preferences instance, and like we did, so I'll create a variable called preferences and to the shared preferences dot get instance. And oh, I had forgotten, it's also, it returns a future, so I need to put the await keyword and also the s keyword here. And yeah, I think that works well for us. Oh, sorry, my screen is small. Yeah, let me just hide that. Yes, that's better. Yeah, so next thing I'm going to do is now access the name. I'm going to fetch the name. So let us fetch name from shared preferences. So we are still going to use the preferences variable that we have created. And remember now, from the other file we used set string to set the key called username, and we assign it now the value of the name that the user had entered. But here, so we are going to use now get string. So now instead of set string, so here we used set string and the key and then the value. So here we are going to use get string and pass in the exactly as we used here. Yeah, so that will work. And then maybe what I can do, I can use some local statement. I can set state, our name variable will be equal to oh, I need to assign this. I need a variable, so string fetch name, let's just call it fetch name, will be equal to that. So now when we come to update it, use one of Flutter's key features, that is hot restart. I'm going to restart my application so that now it can take us back to the input details screen, and we input some more details. So I'll repeat the same details that we use, or we can use any. So I'll add Isaac Mutie, that's my name, and I'll put, actually this time I'm not going to put a dummy email, I'm going to put my email. So I'll put my email there, so that is my email, and just a dummy password. Yeah, this is a dummy password, and then I'm going to submit. Yeah, and this one has returned null. So let's troubleshoot. Ooh, yes. Remember, when you're getting screen now, you have to like get the key name that you used here. We used username, and I forgot to add that, so we are going to add that. And also, before maybe correct key name, so maybe first I can leave it as key, and then like for user experience, sometimes it may be a bad experience when a user enters in your application and they find that my name is null. I don't know about you, but personally I wouldn't take that lightly because null is in my name. So we are going to see how we can solve that and avoid the string now returning a null. So but first, let's input our correct key and see if this works. So sorry, so we are going to restart. Let's input them from scratch again, but could load. Yeah, so I'll input the values again very quickly. Yeah, so this time I'll try and type very faster, and my dummy password. Yeah, so that I expect that to work. So maybe let me first restart it. So if I hot reload, yes, so since now we hadn't fetched the email dummymail.com, I don't know Sam's email, so I just use some dummy email, and also I'll input a dummy password. Yeah, so if that's so, boom, as you can see, it has updated our stage, and we have my name is Sam as we entered, and my email is sam@email.com. Yeah, so that's generally how you are going to use shared preferences, and it's a very easy way. So the only thing you need is set the keys, like you have to. So just allow me, I'll dignify that so that now we can do our databases again. And before we do that, guys, remember from spec.yaml, so there are a few packages that you need like now to do this. Oh, my NNS will reconnect it back again. Yeah, so we need the sqlite plugin and the path plugin, so to do that. But before we do that, so an effective way of storing these details now, instead of storing them manually, will be model. So before I could start initiating the database, so let me just close these files now. And the next thing we are going to do is create a user model and an accessor file to be able to access the user details now from the database. We are going to create the database there to access it from there. Yeah, so if I can come here and create a new folder, I call it models, but we have only one model. So I'll go ahead and create a new file called user.dat. Yes, that is right. So this is where we are going to create now a model where we'll be fetching, like this one will just like store the user model. So it's a class, I'll call it a class user. And for this class, so the first thing we are going to do is like specify the user properties, like from a class. So the user properties or variables, so maybe a user can have, and also an email, so string email, and also a password. Yes, so still the same. What happened here? Yes, some typo, final string password. Yeah, so that being said, the next thing we need to create is the constructor, like now how we'll be passing the details in a model. So I'll pass in a constructor there, and I'll make all those properties optional and named. So adding the curly braces makes them optional, and sorry, they make them named parameters, but all of them are going to be optional, so we are not going to add any keyword to them. So for writing a constructor, I'll say this dot id, this dot name, and this dot email, and this password. Yes, so we have our named parameters there. And so one thing I need you to note here is when creating now when creating a database now, like, you cannot store the user object as it is. So for you to be able to details to the database, you will need to create a map. Like, you need to pass the details in a map. So, and for you to retrieve, you will retrieve now a map, and we'll have to convert it back to an object now for like ease of usage. So next thing, I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to convert the user object to a map, to the name property. It will have an email, so these were assigned to the email property. And finally, we'll have our password. Yes, so this one will be assigned to the password property. Yeah, so that is that for the to map function. Will be responsible for converting a user object to a map. And also we'll also need to write a factory now for converting now user map back to an object. For example, when you query the user from the database, it will return to you a map. So we'll need to convert that back to an object. So we'll read here. So here we'll have the logic to convert user map user object. Yes, and it's going to be a factory. So you can learn about factories later. Just going to call it user.from map, and this one will take now a map. And remember, a map is the key will be of type string and the value will be of type dynamic, and let's just call it a map. This one will return, actually, since it's just returning an object, we don't have to put the curly braces. So take advantage of the fat arrow. So let's return a user object, and for this user object will be map at the key ID. Remember, we created a key ID here, and the name will be the map, the name key in the map, and the email will be now the, because we need to import the sqlite plugin. Yeah, our error is gone. So our first thing will be to create the database. Ooh, typo. Yes, so the first thing will be to create the database. So I create a variable here. I give it type. So it's a database. So it's also a future. So this is how you create now the SQLite database. So sorry. So it's a variable of, it's a future which is of type database. I'm having a lot of typos today. Database, yes, is equals to, so the SQLite plugin provides that with the method now for creating, and it's called open database. And like you can see here, it needs us to pass the path. So the path here, let me just wrap that and put it here for visibility purposes. So the open database will take three now main properties, so, or arguments, let me call them arguments. So it will need a path, and now the on create callback, and it will need a version. So I'll explain what those do, but let's first give it the path. So the path add argument. So here we are going to use it's a helper function provided by the path. It automatically imported the path package there, so we need to join the path. So the reason for that is to get like where the databases are getting stored in the device, and we join it with the database name. Yeah, so we want to access where databases get stored, and it's a future. So the path plugin already provides a function to do that, and it's called get database path. Yes, this one. And it's of type future, so we need to add the await keyword there, and we'll add the async modify. And the next part, so you join two parts. We are going to join the databases path, and the name of the database, to call it my database.db. Yes, so that one now creates our database. We need to pass an on create function callback. So this one is a callback that takes the db, and I'll explain what these are. So the db is the database that will be created now, this one, and also the version of the data. So we'll provide the version below, and the version is used like now to make upgrades or downgrades so to the database. For more information, I'll also leave a link in the description for you to be able to learn more about the open database method of the sqlite plugin. So this one is a function, so it's a callback. So I'm going to return a function provided by the sqlite plugin. So it's called db here. So we are going to create table users, and create table, and these users will have an ID. So the ID will be an type, and it will be also our primary key, and we'll also give it the auto increment so that we don't have to specify it anytime we are adding the user. And also remember the user header name, so we need to store the name is your type text, and also we'll need email, it will also be of type text, and password also of type text. Also guys, don't make an error. So this is an error I've made before, so maybe you can learn from me. When you create this, put a comma on the last column name. So this will be the column name, so do not put a comma here on the last. So that's it for our create database. So we need to return the database. So let me just get where it ends. It ends there. So we need to return the database. Boom. And we don't have any errors or warnings. Good. So this one will be created when we rerun the app again. And very quickly, I want us to create a function enable us now to insert a user into the database and also query the user. So next on, I'll create a function for inserting a user to the database, and it will be a future and a void. So it won't return anything. So and it will be called insert you. So I'll also add the async modifier because we are expecting now future to be so what we are going to do, the first thing is get the database that we created, and I'm going to create a so final database db is equals to get database, the function that created the above. We have an error. Yes, it's a future. So we need to add the await keyword. So that one gets our database, and now we are going to insert the user. So we have some helper functions provided by sqlite. So we are going to do the db.insert table and values. Like you can see from it, it expects a table name and then the values. Now so insert user here, so I want us to pass the user here, so it will accept a user of type user. So let us fix this, so it doesn't know what user is. So we are going to import it. So we'll give this function the user object, and then we'll pass the table name here, users. Let me confirm that yes, it's users, and the values remember now in our model to insert the data to created a to map function that now returns, converts a user object to a map. So that's what we are going to do here, where the column name, so where the column name is equals to, I'll use the argument modifier and pass now the argument here. So I'll pass a list here. So this list takes now the arguments that you have passed with now this question mark, which is like the argument now operator. So it passes them in order and going to pass the email that we have just entered. So let me just format that for visibility. Yeah, so this does, so it queries the table users where the email column is equals to the email. So this one replaced here. And what have I done? Okay, yes, so I think, yeah, sorry for that, I had pressed something else. So let's response, but first we'll have to check if it's null. So we are going to return if response is not empty. We are going to return so the user.from map. Remember, like we are fetching a map and we need to convert it back to a user. So here we need to pass the map, which is the response that we have received. Get the first result as fetch user by email. So here, like, I'm just going to add code the email here for, so I just had my email kasiremuya@gmail.com. yes, and the next thing, remember, like we checked if the response is not empty, we return null. So we are going to response is empty and update the state. Oh, that reminds me, we need to add some details now to store the user details. So first user details, details. We don't have anything for now, yeah, or maybe we don't need it. So let me come here. So yeah, so after fetching the user, we are going to see user is not equals to null. Then I'm going to set state details is equals to user. Yeah, I know it's not the best of naming convention. It's good, like now for simplicity purposes. So we fetch the user from the database, we check if they are not null, we update them. Now we update the details to use this user that we have fetched. And now then we are going to do here. Now remember, here we are just saying my name is name and my email is email. So we are going to modify this and say name is details.name. Remember that details is a user object, and here we're going to use details.email. Yeah, it doesn't know that is, so we need to add the curly braces there. Missed that, yes. And I don't think we have any errors, so I think right now we can test. Maybe before we run the application, let me just take you quickly on what we did. So insert details, so we got the user object, inserted them to the DB and directed our details screen. And here, so we have a variable called details, which will store now the user details. And when the state is initiated, so we fetch the details from the database, and this one fetches the user by email and checks if they are not null, date user. Yeah. So for now, let's rerun the app, and everything is going to be okay. So this one will just take a few seconds again, guys. and then we'll call. Yeah, so let's just give it a short one connected from my screen, and I don't know why it's taking a long time to launch. Yeah, there it is. So it take a few seconds. Yeah, so I expect this to take shortest time possible and to appear in much of its time, but I'm sure it will be done very soon. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so there we go. I have some checks here. Yeah, so done. We hope everything is going to be okay. Yeah, let me push this again to. Yeah, so we are going to re-input the details that we had put, and hopefully everything is going to work fine. So I'm going to my name, I'm going to enter my email. Let me make sure I got that right because I did it here. And then let me just use a dummy password. I do that. Yes, here it is. So it brought us a short error. So as you can see, it has fetched now from the database. So it has told us that my name is email. Oh, this one we don't need. So my name is Isaac and my email is now what we had entered. As you can see, we didn't add code them somewhere. And so guys, so that's it now for data per Flutter. And maybe before we call it a day, that is something I promised you that I'll show, like to avoid now shared preferences returning a null. So allow me to uncomment that for a while, and also uncomment that and that. Yes, so everything should be okay now. So we are not going to rerun this to avoid now like it will run both of them. And so here we are saying that, for example, the fetch name is equals to preferences.getString username, and this my null. So to make sure that you check if it doesn't return null, so you add the null operator here. So it's true, and then you add the null keyword. So what this is going to do is, so it's going to try and look for the key name in the shared preferences, and if it doesn't find any, it now assigns the fetch name to null. So all you need to do, check like if the fetch name is not equal to null, then update the state. So yeah, so that's it guys. Let me take this back now to the comments. Yeah, so that we can remain with the database one. So I'll also leave a link below